this morning. Well, there you go. Welcome,
There you go.
everybody. There's our new intro video. And I have to say, I enjoyed playing that, waiting that. And welcome to the last show of, it's December 18th, 2024. And this is going to be the last show of the year. We've got a 2-week break, given that we're a week away from Christmas Day.
Yep,
So
it's Christmas
happy
Day,
Christmas,
and 2
everybody.
days after Christmas, we're moving downstairs,
Yeah.
and it's just going to be a nightmare.
But hey, if you want to give me a good Christmas present, I'm open to a new Maserati. I really am. Come on, Jagmeet. You've got a Maserati to donate. You can do one. You can do that, can't you, Mr. Singh? I mean, you might not even be an MP next year. You may not be able to pay for it. So hey, donate it.
I just think everybody should be putting their things in there saying voting none of the above.
None of the above.
None of the above gets a majority of government.
Okay, so let us introduce ourselves the way we normally do, and welcome to Spin Legal by Invictus Legal LLP, and you can contact Invictus Legal on 905-688-5598. Email Angela at angela@weareinvictus.legal or myself at peter@weareinvictus.legal, or go check our website out at weareinvictus.legal. All right, so do that right away. No, actually, do it after the show when the show's finished, okay? When we do this next, okay? So here's a big question. What have been the legal themes of 2024? It's important because, in fact, actually, our first show was about the third week in January of 24, wasn't it?
Yep.
Second or third week of 20.
I remember we were planning that.
Yeah. We didn't even know what to call it when we first called our first show. We almost invented the word "spin legal" on the actual first show, and we almost forgot it before as soon as we invented it.
Yeah. They said, "What did we call the show again?" Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember saying that.
Well, we're going to get bigger and better in the new year.
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot of surprises for you.
Yeah.
For you listeners.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. This is the last show of 2024, and the next show is going to be January the 8th, 2025.
And
so
hopefully
remember,
we'll be all unpacked. Everything will be working in our new office.
If we're not here on January the 8th, 2025, something bad has gone wrong.
Yeah, you'll know that something happened. Something's not working, or we didn't finish unpacking, or I fell down under a bunch of boxes, or Peter dropped dead trying to lift things. Then I had to play that little violin for him.
Yeah, I was going to play the bigger one. I was going to steal my brother's violin and
play the cello.
Well, my brother was a violin player. He loved it. So was my mother, actually. I never had the talent for it, but then they never had the talent for the drums. Right. Okay. So there you go. Let's think about what the legal themes of 2024 have been all about. Okay.
Okay.
Because I think it's important that we kind of think about that and hang on to them for 2025, because they're going to be around for a while, aren't they?
Yep. And some of them will not be passed until 2025.
Or maybe later.
Yeah, like that one there, the notwithstanding clause thing.
Yeah.
With the homeless. That's not going to be expected to be in action until after March of 2025. Why? Because the Ontario government is on a recess.
Yep.
And they generally don't come back until February, March.
Well, actually, unlike the national government right now is actually on a recess. It went into recess yesterday, and is not due back until about 25th of January. And some people are saying it should be prorogued then, so that they can get a new Liberal.
It might be better.
Yeah, so the Liberals can get a new leader. However,
get a new leader, and
I'm saying that that Mr. Trudeau is
up to
lying to his position. He thinks he's not the one with the problem. He's the one who's got who's the visionary, whereas everybody else has got the problem. Yeah, he's
got 8 cabinet ministers that can explain otherwise.
Yeah, he's got 9 cabinet ministers who can say others. Otherwise, yeah, including one who some people say were probably the best asset the Liberals have right now, Christopher Freeland. But
exactly, and when I hear on TV, and Doug Ford talks very highly of Christopher Freeland, and other people have talked highly of Christopher Freeland, regardless of what political stripe they were.
Yeah,
and I'm very saddened by that to see her leave like that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk for a moment about notwithstanding clause and the homeless resolution. There's a belief out there that if we elect, we put something into power, an ability for the police and other forces to actually clear homeless encampments, clear those tent cities away, that will do something to resolve homelessness. I have seen enough of homelessness around our cities here, and I don't see, when you think about it, neither you or I see the extent to the homeless problem in places like Toronto. What we see here in Niagara region is absolutely tiny compared to what the problem must be like in somewhere like Toronto.
Well, it depends on where you're looking too, because some parts of Toronto don't have as much. Some of them have a huge amount.
Sure, I get it. And
it's a very homelessness is. But the thing is, at one point, homelessness was kind of restricted to the big cities, and then now it's basically everywhere.
Well,
even in small towns, you're getting a lot of them.
It was, but then I heard this issue when I first came to Niagara Falls. I heard this issue about them exporting their homeless to places like Niagara. All right, what happens is the police are supposedly giving out bus tickets, one-way bus tickets to Niagara.
I don't think so.
And as I say, it's one of these kind of, I'm not sure whether it really is true or not. And
people just like to think that that's what's happening because they don't want to see it happening in their town. And it just corresponding homelessness goes up with the rising rents, with the rent evictions, with a whole lot of stuff, right? But anyways, this legislation that they want passed, one of them is that they want to, if somebody is caught or believed to be using illegal drugs, keyword here, believed to be using illegal drugs, even if it's in a tent, that they would be automatically arrested, moved, and possibly jailed, and charged a $10,000 fine. If you could show me a person who's homeless and has $10,000 to pay a fine, I've got a bridge for you, a swamp to sell you from Florida.
I was going to say, Angela, though, that, hey, just think about, how many of your friends you might know, how many people you might know, sorry, not friends necessarily, but everybody knows somebody who walks around every once in a while looking disheveled, right? So how many disheveled people do you know that have got homes, etc., that could be walking down the road? Maybe they've just had a bad day at work or whatever.
I know a lot of them.
And they were just like that. And maybe they're not drug users, but they just look disheveled on the way home and with a real sad look upon their face. So I can see the police pulling them over and saying, hey, you, stop. And
then the other one is for somebody who might be able to trespass.
Yeah,
might. Okay, I might. Okay, that's like you might do something. I might steal something. I might kill somebody. Okay, how do they know? I might.
Yeah, this is in the realms of thought crimes, isn't it?
Yeah, like the Matrix. Let's put it
Yeah,
back in.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Thought
this is
crimes like the Matrix and Minority Report.
Minority Report. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the other one. Yeah, I think we have to start thinking about this. What kind of legislation is being passed? Like, I know that the intent behind this, well, we just want to stop them from, we want our parks, we
Get
want
it?
places to be safe. I,
I
homeless
get it.
people don't harm people.
Yeah, I get it that the intent is to actually have, is to make our cities cleaner and get the homeless out of the cities,
And
right?
the other part of it was that they want to look at changes to the Mental Health Act, which is very scary.
Well, I actually see what I see with the net result of the notwithstanding clause is that in-town encampments might well be broken up, and what will happen is the city will buy small plots of land around the place, 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, that kind of plots of land, put a washing facilities in there, and they'll have a male encampment here, a female encampment there.
Yeah, I somehow highly doubt that. You know what will happen? People will be broken up, and each homeless person will go their own way. And there's empty buildings downtown. They're
Well,
going to be breaking into them.
that's another issue
Yeah,
entirely as
they're
well.
going to be
Yeah.
causing a lot more problems, and there'll be a lot more drug overdoses where
Yep.
people are dying alone.
Yeah.
Especially with the second part of the thing when they're getting rid of the safe consumption sites, where people were drug users were going to safe consumption sites, where first of all they would get access to clean drugs that aren't containing toxic ingredients, and they would also be using the presence of people who could be helpful to them. First of all, A,
It's an
save their
interesting.
lives if they overdose, and secondly, maybe refer them to help if they want it.
Well, the interesting thing is the assumption that all homeless people are drug addicts.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily true. I mean, when I was involved in the 80s, I was involved in a study. It was pretty broad. What they did, it was a different type of study. And what they did is they compared the numbers of people who were addicted to drugs or who had addiction problems and people who had mental health problems among very poor people who are either housed and people who are unhoused. The numbers are relatively the same.
What you're saying from that is in homelessness situations, the percentage that have drug problems are the same as those that live in poor housing
Yeah,
situations.
yeah.
So,
And poor
um,
housing can precipitate mental health issues.
yeah,
And a lot of homeless people become that way after they become homeless. And this is not from me. This is not from me, Angela Browne. This is from many, many studies. Many people who also work with the homeless, okay, like Start Me Up Niagara,
yeah.
NADSO, other people who have actually witnessed people who are out on the
So
streets,
organizations that
talk
have,
to them.
yeah,
And I
organizations.
even went out and talked to people who are homeless.
Yeah.
And I've asked them, I said, you obviously had a home at one time. What happened? And I just let them talk.
Mm.
A
And,
lot of
and a
them,
lot of what a
they
lot
come
of
from
what
different
happens,
pathways.
yeah,
And they don't necessarily have drugs or mental illness that leads them there.
yeah, and a
And a
lot of
lot of
what
it's financial.
things like
Sometimes it's
breakups.
breakups, like domestic violence and breakups.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. I was going to say a lot of what happened is actually breakups, loss of jobs, and the like. Right?
Yeah, and then there's other things too, where your partner is beating you up. You're
Yeah,
supposed to go to a safe place. You can only stay so long at the women's shelter. There's nowhere else for you to go, except if you want to go back to your abuser. I
yeah,
mean, there's a lot of situations, and then there's other people that, when they get homeless, then of course they encounter the drug dealers.
yeah.
Where do the drug dealers market their wares?
Well, in fact, actually, that's an issue which is not going to go away because
It's not.
the use of with notwithstanding clause, in fact, actually, what they need to do is target those drug dealers who are giving away drugs to many homeless
Yeah,
people.
they sell them for cheap at first, and then
Yeah,
they start getting them more at higher up in prices. And some
Yeah.
of them are being trafficked, particularly the women and the
Yeah.
kids.
All right. Let's move on from the homeless situation to another area where homelessness kind of might well come into play.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
LTB,
That's another cause of homelessness.
yeah, one of the causes of homelessness is a landlord and tenant board. Now, according to a meeting that we were both at 2 weeks ago, the number of number of cases on the backlog has grown, but the effectiveness of the board has become way more effective at resolving cases. So the caseload has grown, but the number of applications has grown, and the numbers of cases that they're managing through the board has grown as well. So we now in 2020, at the tail end of 24, we have way more cases, probably 3 times as many cases as were being handled and managed through the system in 2019.
Yeah, they hired 150 new adjudicators, both full and part-time.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of differences I've seen in the board. Like, for example, you'll have in room 150 on Monday, they'll only be listening to L1 applications, which is applications for rent arrears. And then on Tuesday, they'll be having L1s where the tenant has filed a Section 82 or Section 83 concerns, because they have to do that 7 days ahead. So they know that this is a possibility that'll come up. So then they schedule a little bit extra time for that. Then on another date, they might do all N12s where a landlord might want to move into the unit.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's done in a way where they narrow it down and narrow its focus. And they have the tenant duty council, and they also have board moderators.
Well, this is actually an area, you mentioned just their tenant duty council. That's an area that I'm being increasingly concerned about. Tenant duty council, basically, it used to be we had overkill of tenant duty council. I wish they would get it together and say, we will have one tenant duty council in each room, which basically means that it does not matter where the tenant duty council comes from. A tenant duty council from Ottawa should be able to deal with a tenant who has a problem, who lives in Windsor, or as a tenant who lives in Niagara, who lives in London, etc., as well as those that live in Ottawa.
So if I'm serving as tenant duty council, I shouldn't have to go to 14 different rooms to see tenants.
Yeah, one room per tenant duty council, and basically cover all the areas that are being covered by that room. All right. And that's an area that I think they still need to do a lot of improvement upon, because it's to say to a person, you needed to have spoken to your local legal clinic before you came on this call.
Exactly. And this is another thing too, that I feel that they should be more streaming them towards the legal clinics, getting them to talk to the legal clinics so that they meet them well before there is a hearing.
That they are doing. They do recommend in the paperwork, but again, when you come there, they say there's no guarantee that you will get tenant duty counsel.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, because one of the things too that I used to do when they met in person was, if I was meeting with tenants who were not represented, and my final goal was to come up with a mediated settlement, which may or may not include termination.
Yeah.
I wanted that tenants to go seek duty counsel to talk to them. And then, if possible, while I was in person, to have the duty counsel representative to come into the room while we mediated.
Yeah.
Because I did not want to have the tenants misunderstand what's going on in the room.
And we know one particular individual that we've actually encountered over the last few weeks in 2 or 3 sessions at the LTB, where this representative only represents landlords, and this individual will frequently go into meetings with tenants and present to them, you have no choice but to move out. What date are you moving out?
Yeah, it's not a matter of whether or not you're moving, but what date.
Yeah, give me a date.
Yep.
right? And
Yeah.
you will be gone by this date.
Yeah.
And that's the entire approach of those people. And the worst is that that particular individual represents some of the most needy in our society.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that that I, as a legal representative, consider this to be part of an ethical
Yeah,
responsibility. Okay? Particularly if the tenants I'm looking at negotiating with are, or at least in arrears of rent in some way, or are low income, or who have a
yeah.
disability. I want to make sure that I'm not going to go in there like a steamroller and
No,
that's not what I do.
and that's actually the wrong thing for anybody in the legal profession to be doing. You
Hmm.
know, part of, if you're a landlord representative, of course you have to be judiciously representing your landlord. Yes,
Absolutely.
your tenant may owe your landlord $58,000, but the point being is that there's still a set of rules by which you've got to
Yeah,
live
set
by.
of rules so that
And
the tenant
yeah,
understands the seriousness of the situation.
exactly.
The tenant might have to understand that they probably have to leave at some point, but we have to look at how we can help them.
Yeah,
Okay? And you have to respect the
yeah.
human rights code
All
whenever you're
right.
considering these things. Like I had a situation when we were still meeting in person. The guy, I think he owed 2 or 3 months rent that was back. And I was working with a landlord that I did a lot of work for. And this gentleman, just before we were going in for the eviction hearing, he was telling me he was struggling with cancer and he had cancer treatments. And it was a type of cancer that you really have to go through a lot of treatments and you're really not going to be able to work for a little while. Okay?
Yeah,
So he showed me that. It was a letter from his oncologist and he was just getting onto EI benefits. Okay? So what I asked him, I said, is there something you want me to do, like that you want me to talk to my landlord about? Because I think they would be open to listening. So what I did is I talked to the landlord. Let's not terminate this guy. Let's see if we can put him on a payment plan. So once he's over his cancer and so forth and finished treatments, that he can catch up that way. Okay, so that's what we did.
yeah.
And I don't think we ever had to evict that guy.
And that's an important aspect, because actually you think about that, is that both yourself and the landlord in question were considering that individual's rights. Of course, there are some people who you will give that payment plan to, and what happens is, well, okay, I paid, but now I don't care about Angela's payment plan arrangement. I'm not going to pay,
I made
right?
one payment. Woo!
Yeah, yeah. And at the end of the day, they're making the one payment, they're treating it as a joke, and those people need to be evicted, right?
Yeah, those are the ones. That's why you have a Section
Yeah,
78 in there.
and that very often you turn around to other tenants who are suffering hardship, and they'll be the first. Who thinks this individual needs to be evicted? The tenant who's suffering the most hardship is the first to put his hand up,
Yeah.
right? Who's
Hmm.
who's basically saying, no, he was lying to you. I could tell he was lying to you in the first instance that he was there, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
but you have to go through that process.
You
Okay.
have to be you have to be careful with evictions. Like, sure, there's a lot of times I've seen it. And then there's other tenants that, yes, we try our hardest to get them out
Yeah.
because some tenants do need to go,
Yeah.
right? They just simply cannot continue to occupy property that belongs to somebody else. They become squatters then.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And I
So
think that a lot of landlords watching this will probably say, "Yay!" Somebody agrees with me.
right. So okay. So we talked about the LTB backlog growing, but tell us what's going on with the HRTO.
January, molasses, turtles, going through. When the Bill 7, which created the Human Rights Amendment Act,
Yeah.
was supposed to say that we're going to have everything cleared up within a year for most cases. Guess what? Some of my cases are still going on since 2017, 18.
I was going to say, there are some people that we have coming through the firm that I would have said that were more friends than they are clients of yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have. I'm not saying they don't pay. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't pay, but they have been here such a long time that they're more on the friends category than they are the client category, right?
Mm-hmm. Every
Right.
law firm has those.
Yeah, and this is the part of the problem that I think we've gotten with the HRTO is why hasn't there been an ombudsman report for the Human Rights Tribunal?
Absolutely. There has been a lot of complaints with human rights lawyers and a group called Tribunal Watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so people want to look that up, Tribunal Watch.
Yeah.
And they have done a significant amount of work on the functioning of tribunals in general, including human rights.
Yeah.
There's a couple of women who used to be tribunal adjudicators and now and expert human rights lawyers before they became adjudicators. And they've written some excellent reports about how the HRTO is failing people and human rights. Right? And then there's
Why?
lately there seemed to be a problem saying the Human Rights Tribunal is now getting through its backlog by let's just go through and dismiss as many claims as we can. So we
Yeah,
can
but
get to
Dane,
the
why?
finish line.
You can't dismiss. You can't just dismiss a claim.
Yeah, you
You can't
can't. It has
do
to be
anything.
looked at properly. There are grounds to dismiss some of
Oh,
them, but not
of
all of them.
course, of course. But again, there was grounds when with the massive backlog.
The guy got blue eyes, but they only like people with green eyes. Like you
Well,
can't dismiss. Yep.
with the massive backlog the LTB had, they couldn't just go around dismissing them, even
can't.
though, for example, there were some cases whereby the tenant was no longer in the property, the
Yeah.
landlord was no longer seeking to collect the rent, but they couldn't dismiss that. They simply dismissed
Yeah,
them.
no, they just put an order.
Yeah.
Right? And it was done ex parte order.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean these things, and same as some cases at the Human Rights Tribunal. I get people who lose interest in their case for a long time.
course.
So what I do is I file we call a Form 26, okay, which means I want to have summary judgment on this case to have it dismissed because there's no triable issues. The person hasn't filed any reports, they haven't filed any evidence, any witnesses, nothing. And when you ask them to respond statement of particulars, they didn't respond to the statement of particulars. Nothing came out. So basically toss. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be doing a number of those in the next little while because like those are ones that need to be looked at. Maybe a hearing, maybe not, depending on the circumstances of the case. Sometimes it's done in writing. Sometimes it's done in person. Like not in person, but over the Zoom.
All right. So moving on. Navigating the hybrid work era. Some employers want workers to come back to the office. Some are now actually happy to have them working at home.
Yep.
We'll cover that. There's actually some new legislation which will cover this as well, which we can talk about later on as we come back through this. All right.
Like as they come back, we're going to find that there's a narrow range of occupations and a narrow range of types of work that could be done at home.
Well,
if you're doing it, just do it.
Let's be honest. If you work in a manufacturing job, or I'm
a cook in a restaurant,
or a cook in a restaurant, or you work in a factory, there is no way your factory work can ever be done at home.
Did that Air Canada pilot strike? Did they want to work at
but you see, I can fly the 747 from my mobile phone. Don't you know?
Yep. So these things, I think there's got to be some rational thought put to it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not the employee's decision. This is the employer's decision. Okay. Yeah. Where things got mucked up is when people were sent home during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand when they were sent home to the pandemic, these are the ones that were sent home, not people who always worked remotely, because there are some workplaces that were always remote or were remote before the pandemic, which is fine. That was something that was already pre-designed. But those who were sent home during the pandemic And then sometimes what happens is people say, oh, this is fun. Now I can slack off. I can watch Netflix. I can do this. And then I can go finish off my work at nighttime after my kids gone to bed. I mean, that's fine. But the thing is, this
Well,
is still
actually,
your
no.
employer's prerogative.
No, it's not fine, Angela, because if you're contracted to work between 9 and 5, you should be working between 9 and 5. Doing your work, you may be able to do your work between midnight and 3 a.m., but that is not what your contract states.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of people, where it's getting pretty sophisticated with a lot of things. Like you have whole groups of employees that say, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to go back to the office. They don't understand what this also does. It creates a lot of planning nightmares, a lot of problems for downtown businesses,
Yep.
a lot of funding issues. And for those that completely close their offices or sell them off, there's commercial tax deficits, okay, where people who are working at home, they're paying residential taxes, not people working in an office where commercial taxes, which are levied at a much higher rate, are being paid.
Yep.
So these things all have to be taken into consideration about
And
if they
break
need to do this, they need to restructure that too.
and breaking a commercial lease often entails costs.
Yeah,
For example, if you were leasing 40,000 square foot of office space in the building next to us, and you suddenly now stop leasing 40, you go from 40,000 to 20,000 square foot of office space. Guess what? You committed to yourself to the next 5 years. Hey, you're
yeah,
going to be paying 40,000 square foot of office space.
yep. You got to do that, or you got to sublease it,
Yep. Yep.
okay? And
Exactly.
to other businesses who need
Yep.
space.
Yep.
And the thing is, there's a lot of issues that have to do it. There are small businesses that still want office space. They may not want as much office space as maybe in the past, but eventually those small businesses might grow and may
Yep.
be requiring more. So these things all have to be taken into consideration.
Yep.
And where did I work when I first started doing the work that I do now? I worked at home. Why did I stop working at home? I don't exactly like to have my clients know where I live. I don't exactly like to have people say, well, I can drop by, I got to drop off this. Where do I drop it off? So I had a box number at that time. My clients couldn't find the box, where to put the box number, so they're looking for the skyscraper at 111 Ridley Avenue. So this is the kind of thing. So I got
Because you were at Suite 712, weren't you?
374 actually.
Ah, well,
But it was a
who
really
cares?
weird type of thing where
Yeah.
people were looking for that skyscraper, okay?
Yeah.
And they couldn't find it. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff, and it was a hassle. And it was also a
Yeah.
hassle to get around if I actually had to meet with a client.
Yeah.
Even when I found um, where you pay for workspace by the day, I still had to drag all my kit with me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And when you don't drive, that's an interesting thing to do, right? Because I had to drag
Yeah.
my kit there,
But
set it up, and drag it back.
navigating a hybrid work in the
Yeah,
hybrid work area
yeah,
does require some changes in the law. That's for sure.
yeah.
Right.
And then
And
you
then,
have to be
and you,
very serious about it too. And then people who are doing hybrid work, if it's hybrid for a reason, because you want people together for a certain number of days a week, and people are optional for other days of the week, then you got to make sure they're coming in on the same days,
yeah. Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Or at least the people who are working together are coming in on the same days.
Yeah.
Okay? Rather
Okay.
than I'm going to come into the office whenever I feel like it, I show up and the rest of my team is at home, so I'm just going to Zoom call at the office.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there
Absolutely.
has to be a lot of practicalities.
There has
Right?
to be some thought into it,
Yeah,
and as you say, it's the employer that sets
yeah,
the
and it's the
actual
employer that
rules.
has to make
Yeah.
this decision. Hey, consult the employees, as much as you can in terms of the type of work that your office does. Hey, doing a legal firm, like at most I've seen them do, I've known some people who've offered a completely virtual law office, but that's really hard to do because, first of all, you're missing on 30 to 40% of your clientele. because you're serving the public. And this is what I have to remind people: you're serving the public. At some point, I'll talk about providing an accessible practice,
Yeah, but
and
again,
might be more better understood at that time.
hey, Angela, remember tomorrow I've got a client call first thing in the morning from somebody who's in Asia.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
happened. It
yeah,
happened. We're serving the public that way.
yeah. We're serving the public.
Yeah,
Hey, we do a mixed type. We do a mixed, virtual, mixed in person, and mixed virtual.
yep,
Hey, we have clients coming in here because they don't have a computer.
yep, absolutely.
Okay,
All
and
right.
they need help to go to their hearings.
Okay, let's move on.
And that's up to 25 to 30%.
Yep.
And
Okay,
then there's
let's move
others who
on.
may have a computer, but they're not comfortable sitting at home using it when they may want to talk to me. Even though I say, I have a phone, I can text you, you can text me, but some people don't want to do that. So there's lots of things, that have to go into this, and it's a lot to unpack. And I really don't think it's going to, and also, too, they have to really fix the downtowns. Because I walk downtowns in some places, in some cities, where there's a lot of work at home and work from home, and it's a ghost town downtown.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's particularly healthy for the community.
Okay, so let's move on. So province is going to close 5 Toronto supervised drug consumption sites. I know you're particularly angry about this one.
Oh, yes, that's another thing. Okay, so they want to close the supervised drug consumption sites because, oh, people are using drugs, they're allowed to use drugs and blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's close them down. No, people aren't going to stop using just because these consumption sites are closed down. We're going to have a lot of unsupervised drug consumption sites, and some of them may be in your backyard.
Well, I was going to say some of them are on the entrance way to the new condos that you're putting up on
Yeah.
Bloor Street or whatever.
I actually walked down to one of the condo buildings where they're selling the condos, and I said, you're putting this up. I want the prices to go down for these condos. They go, why? And I said, first of all, I said they're a little high for people in this area. But secondly, and more importantly, they're next to a shooting gallery. The person I spoke to didn't understand what a shooting gallery was. So I gestured and showed him about shooting up the arm. And he said, oh, really? I said, yeah, they all hang around the library and they use injectable drugs.
Yeah.
Okay? And I've seen it, and they leave the needles behind. But there are people who do pick up the needles afterwards.
Don't know, okay, so if one is talking about criminalizing drugs again, that's a different issue.
Good luck. Good luck, Polyev. I know he wants to criminalize them again.
Supervised drug sites are actually the safe way, because there's always somebody there to help when things go wrong.
Yeah, when something goes wrong, you go into an overdose state, they have the naloxone, the Narcan on hand, they give that to you. And also, these people have link ups to help hook you up to addiction support services to get you out of that if you want to leave the addiction scene. Like, this is like a type of thing, you develop a trust relationship with certain people. And people who work in these types of sites are people who reach out to you and do try to build your trust. And you don't want to lose those people who have built the trust with the drug users, so that these people that they trust can also help guide them to help. Okay? If you want people to get help, that's what you're going to do, especially those that are deep into it.
Okay, so one other one which we've got coming on board at some point is going to be this new what do you call it? The Bill 212. Right? Bill 212 has two kind of odd yet related issues. Right? First of all, it's the bill that's going to enact putting the 401, the underground 401 under the a second part of the 401 expansion being underground under the 401.
Oh yes, I can talk to you about people who have dreams.
Right. The second part of it is about controversial legislation to remove bike lanes from 3 major cycling routes in Toronto, And just to let everybody know, these are on Bloor, Young, and University. All right.
Yeah. And also, he's talking about other municipalities too.
Yeah, and
That
again,
other municipalities, like say if you're say in Hamilton or Niagara Falls or somewhere else, and you want to build a bike lane at some frequent path that the cycling community wants to see a bike lane built in. Now it's going to get to a point where you're going to have to ask the province for permission before you
yeah.
can build that bike lane, which I think is very, very, very.
I know you have a lot of concerns about the cyclists using the sidewalk.
Yeah, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to stop cycling and using the roads. If they don't like to use the roads because they're afraid a car will hit them, they're going to go on the sidewalks. And guess what? The pedestrians won't be walking on the sidewalks anymore because they're going to be risking getting hit. I got hit by a cyclist a few years back.
Yeah.
And I hurt down and I busted my jaw like that, and my shoulder got out of shape. And the guy wrote a letter to the Toronto Star over the weekend saying that he was hit and he was in a hospital for several months.
That was obviously before the new rules came into place.
So now if it comes in after the rules, he wouldn't have to sue. He wouldn't have anybody to sue. Like, who do they go to sue? The cyclists probably long took off. We wouldn't be able to identify them. There's no way to identify cyclists. And after you got injured, how are you going to do that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things, there's little thought put into these things. Like, sometimes I just wish when you want to do something and you think you're trying to solve a problem, you try to put some thought into it, as opposed to just going in and ramrodding something through because it works.
I wonder, part A of Bill 212, I can see that coming into play, right?
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see them building the underground roadway.
And that's a lot more expensive than building a highway.
Yeah, it's a lot more. It's probably actually to build underground roads is probably, I believe, 15 times as expensive as to build every mile of above ground road.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that and I think we have enough highways personally. I don't think we need any more highways.
Well, basically what they're looking at, I think, is that they are looking at, if you're on the surface of the 401, let's say, you're probably going 3, 4, 5 exits along. If you go underneath and drive underneath, you're probably bypassing the next 15 exits.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's like you join at the airport, you get the next exit is Young, the next exit then is like 5 exits further down, right? So that is the kind of thing that will happen.
We're trying to build a legacy or something.
I think that's what will happen with
legacy. Are we going to call it the Doug Ford Highway or something?
Of course. Yeah. Right. Okay. But again, that could be problematic. It costs 15 times as much, as I understand, to build an underground roadway as it does to build an overground roadway.
Yeah, and think about this. These are the conservatives.
Yes. Okay.
And they're supposed to be fiscally conservative. I'm very fiscally conservative, and I wouldn't approve that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to another one. Legal Aid has a new business plan. But I have a serious question about this. I didn't look too much into the business plan, but I do understand that actually, hey, Legal Aid doesn't give anybody, they'll give legal advice, but they don't help anybody who has solved their legal problems if they don't have money. Do they?
Yeah, it doesn't. Like, it's just talking about, like when you're talking about, I've had a lot of people go, oh, I've been to the legal clinic and I went to them with this, and okay, why would it have anything to do with what they're doing? Like they're trying to do something. And what I'm finding is a very, very difficult situation. The legal clinics are dealing with overwhelmed, understaffed, overworked, and then they had to come up with a business plan to try to deal with it. So they're trying to do initiatives involving third parties, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, enterprise risk management, 3 years.
Well,
I just did
what's new
the
about
business
that?
plan here. What?
What's new about equity and equity and inclusion? That
Well,
should have
it's
been
always
in
been
there all
done. Why
along.
does it have to be something you got to pour a lot of money into?
Yeah,
I don't. Oh, I just advertise positions, and I've had the United Nations here.
yeah,
I've never
yeah,
had to worry about it.
yeah.
Like I think what has to happen here is there needs to be legal aid certificates provided to paralegals.
That would be a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. And also legal aid certificates need to be more flexible in terms of how much could be charged on it because there are different tiers of complexities for certain types of legal problems that people might require it for.
Yeah.
And in other areas too of law that they may not necessarily cover. I'm having, we're finding ourselves having to represent clients in criminal court, summary criminal court, and they don't get legal aid because, well, we're not going to send you to jail. It doesn't matter. We want to keep these people from getting criminal records.
Yeah.
We have
Oh,
a
yeah.
high degree of success rate with that.
Yeah.
Okay? We don't want people with criminal records because criminal records do a lot of things to you. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, there's actually 5 new laws in Ontario for 2025. And let's quickly go through some of these. They're talking about, we talked about this, Digital Platform for Workers' Rights Act in Ontario.
Must be the Working for Workers Act, Part 6. There was a Working for Workers Act series, okay, that was being implemented, which is interesting. And that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, that's okay. It's
Well,
respectful.
but this is about the digital people working remotely, right? We
Yeah.
were talking about the need for that to clarify some of the issues, and I think this will go part way to clarifying some of the issues.
Yeah.
I think it will cause a whole new set of problems in and of
A
itself.
lot more problems.
Yeah. The Ontario Building Code is being revised. Yeah, the 2024 Ontario Building Code is basically trying to stitch together a few basic issues, and it's based upon what's now the new national building code. So there's a building code that's used nationally across Canada, but there's a couple of good things I'm reading about this. Is that you can actually get training on the building code.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and get building code exams.
Yeah. Particularly if you're a planner or somebody like that who has to have this type of work, this might be required in the future. And
Well,
also, I looked at here is that they're looking at increasing accessibility in the new building code. So anything new that's being built, they're looking at a number of things, which is exciting. And a group called Human Space, which is humanspace.global, and it talks
Yeah.
about the updated Ontario Building Code, which is talks about a number of things where accessibility issues would be in place. Okay, I think they got to look at some of the older buildings too. Okay, like in my practice, I always try to recommend that people who are practicing with the public, that we make all of our practice areas accessible. So if you have an office somewhere, you have to make sure anybody can get into your office and meet with you. Okay? And anybody could use your washroom, or if you're in a restaurant, that anybody can get into your restaurant and order from the menu. And the menu needs to be accessible. So if you're visually impaired, it needs to be a way of doing it. Even one of those grid site those QR codes, that you can do, and then you have a talking phone, that can tell you what's on the menu. So there's a lot of different things that are coming out now. So it's going to be very interesting in the future.
Again, it's permissible. It would be permissible to have a Braille menu, even if you only have 1 or 2 of them in any particular restaurant.
Yep,
right?
we set up a Braille menu. I used to make Braille menus for a couple of restaurants when I had my graphics firm.
Okay, but basically, so there's going to be a new building code compendium you can get right now. It is the most recent version is November 424. So this basically, as I said, there is training and building code exams associated with this one, and it adopts much of the 2020 National Building Code of Canada rules. Okay.
So what it is basically a harmonization across the board.
Yeah.
Okay, where you put them together and try to make it work. And Ontario is going to follow everything. We're going to take all the good ideas from everywhere else and we're going to put it into Ontario and blend it. Okay?
Yeah.
And make it work. Okay? So that should be interesting. I'd just like to see how well that's going to work. Okay? I'd just like to see how well, and hopefully people with disabilities will be better able to do things.
Okay. Next one on this list is Toronto will be implementing updated licensing and zoning bylaws for restaurants, bars, and entertainment venues. And a lot of this is actually, there's going to be a whole heap of new rules associated with this. So there's changes for eating establishments, for retail food establishments, for music venues, for entertainment establishments, nightclubs, etc., etc.
Let me guess, they had to make some work for some bylaw officers in Toronto.
Well, there is that as well. Changes to places of amusement, billiards halls, bowling houses, and carnivals, resources for businesses. So there's a lot of new additions that have gone in there. And yes, that is a cynical approach that, hey, it gives...
I know, you know I'm a cynic.
It's a work, it's a make work situation for bylaw enforcement officers, that's for sure.
Yep. And you're also specifying your type of license, what type of establishment you're having.
Yeah.
Is it primarily for entertainment? Why do they come to you? Are you treating a drinking establishment where you just want to have a bar and you're mostly open at night and that sort of thing? Or is it an entertainment venue? Or is it an OnlyFans venue? Hey.
You and your OnlyFans page, I don't know. You're the only one in this office with an OnlyFans page, you know.
Oh, I thought you did. I saw one.
Not me. Not me at all. But hey, I'm going to be the cynic again with this particular one. Do you know what the cost is for getting a licensing thing for eating establishments in Toronto?
And upgrading it too.
Well, the license for getting an application fee for 2025 is going to be $723. The renewal fee is $525.
Oh my God! I mean, that's a cash cow.
Yeah, that's a cash cow when you see that.
Just to call it an eating establishment as opposed to a restaurant. Okay, so you're going to change it over so it becomes a cash cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Doug Ford's okay with this. I think because municipalities are going to be making a lot more money on these things, like your rent eviction bylaw, your cash cow, your bylaws changes.
And while you're talking about rent eviction bylaw, both Hamilton and Toronto by June 1st next year will actually have in place rent eviction bylaws.
Yeah, they'll be fully enforced.
Yeah, which will require basically $725 to actually apply for a rent eviction license, and $500 to renew your rent eviction license. And essentially, what this is, we discussed this a few weeks ago. The idea being that that the cities are getting involved in it, and they're supposed to be able to say, no, you don't, right?
Yep.
However,
and they're complaining to us about how builders are having a hard time getting things built or getting things constructed or renovated to code and so forth because there's so much red tape attached. Yeah. So why don't we solve that by adding more red tape?
Yeah. And part of the problem that we have, Angela, is that you know as well as I do that there's one organization that's going to say, I don't care. You can have all the bylaws you want.
Is that called the Landlord and Tenant Board?
Care. Yeah, the Landlord and Tenant Board. Because we are the only organization that can evict people for an N12 or N13 type
we're the king of evictions. We can only
Yeah. And essentially, there's no denying that.
Yep.
You go get your renovation license from Hamilton. Do you think it's going to matter what license you've got if you don't have an LTB order in your pocket that says "Get out, Mr. Tenant"?
Mm-hmm.
It's not
They'll
going to
probably
matter.
have to interact that somehow with the LTB eventually,
Oh,
because somebody's going to make sure they do,
yeah.
or else the whole thing will be ruled ultra virus.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point that was made by one of the senior chairs of the landlord and tenant board. His question was about how would that be ultra virus?
Mm-hmm. We were talking about that. I think it was at the stakeholders meeting.
It was at the stakeholders
Yeah.
meeting. The gentleman just shrugged his shoulders and questioned the whole question about whether it's going to be ultra virus or not.
Yeah, and this is where all you need is somebody who's going to challenge that, and I'm sure there will be.
And there will be.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act is supposed to be fully operational by January the 1st, 2025.
See, December 31st, 2024, everything's inaccessible. You wake up on the morning of January 1st, 2025, and ta-da! Everything's supposed to be accessible.
Something tells me this ain't going to happen.
Yep. David Lepofsky's in 100% agreement with us.
Something tells me this is not going to happen, not for anything in the world. Is it going to be fully operational by January 1st, 2025? I don't know why. And how old is the bill? When was it put into place? 2005.
2000, yeah. It
so
started off as the Ontario Disabilities Act.
So you're talking about 20 years to implement this bill.
Yeah. And I was on the Accessibility Committee for Employment Standards back in 2008 till 2010. We worked on that to put into employment standards. And then each year they kept developing it and adding new things and adding new things. And today I'm still noticing that people are being let go and on reasons for that really they could accommodate. So I don't know what it's going to take for people to learn. So but the Human Rights Code always supersedes, even the AODA, the Human Rights Code supersedes. So a whole sort of continuum of rulings and so forth from the Human Rights Code will be used, and that's how these things get into continuous improvement as we go along. But as for the status, there's a lot of things that really need a lot of work. Transportation is still not completely viable in terms of fully operational under AODA. Employment standards is not fully operational under AODA. I think somebody started an educational standards group, and it's very difficult. When you're talking about accessibility, usually it's the government that takes the leadership. Like if the government is employing you, there's all sorts of ways they try to accommodate people who are employed in various things and how they deal with things in their collective agreements and so forth. But private sector, like there's a long ways to go. If you've got more than 20 employees, you have to comply with it. Underneath, you still have to have a plan for accessibility plan. So I've still got to go. I've got to go knock on everybody's door who is on the street, who runs a small business. I got to ask them if they have an accessibility plan, because we're all supposed to have one. It's gonna be a joke. Right?
Show me yours, Angela.
I've had one. Actually, I created one, and then I also created a privacy plan under PEPITA.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go then. All right. Okay.
But but the thing is, there's a lot of people, they need help with these things. And I'm very, very helpful. So people who do need that type of help in developing these things and setting things up with that, I do provide some consulting services on that. And it's very important for businesses to do that. It's not like any big red arm is going to come from the ground and grab you if you don't have one. It's just that I think that it's going to be the direction of the future. where people are
Well,
going to go.
let's put it this way: to anybody who's listening, to any business owners who are listening, it's time to get your seat red hot, because you're going to have to get moving if you don't have a plan already.
Absolutely. There are some organizations I know who do have excellent plans, and we've worked with them, and I have friends of mine who also do this type of work and who've worked with them. And it's very good that some of them are looking at it more progressively and so forth, and it's becoming a topic of interest, which
So
really wasn't at the time.
How long have we got left till the first of January 2025? We have 2 weeks, a whole 14 days.
Right, 2 weeks, man.
Right?
Hurry up, guys.
Okay, another one. There's new rules of civil procedure coming into effect. I've been trying to figure out what these are. Can't find them.
There's new rules of civil procedure around discovery issues, disclosure issues, different things like that. And based on the electronic. A lot of it's because of the electronic litigation, case law, or case lines, different things like that. Okay. I just kind of briefly looked at them. I don't have a full knowledge of them, but that's done. HRTO rules of practice are changing too. And I'm going through some of the proposals. Okay. I don't think that there should not be an automatic drop of a case, because unless give the person a chance to say why they should not drop it.
Yeah.
Okay. There got to be a lot of different things involved. Okay.
Yeah.
Although I've seen worse though.
Okay. So here's an interesting one. I'm not really about laws as such, but they're talking about the development of artificial intelligence within the legal profession.
But we have to get rid of natural stupidity first before we can even start on artificial intelligence.
Well, there was and talking about natural stupidity, somebody wrote a report earlier in the year about some lawyer who had gotten disbarred because of the fact that they went to the AI and they said, write me this complaint, and the AI did write the complaint, all complete with cases that never existed.
Yeah, and if you do that as a legal professional, make sure you check these cases to make sure they exist and that they're relevant.
Okay. Something to note is that 79% of surveyed legal professionals are now using AI in some capacity. And don't get me wrong, it is actually, I'm one of them. I've said, can you write me a letter doing,
Write me a letter of demand to collect the debt.
Yeah, exactly. And I gave the information, and hey, it wrote a letter that was pretty damn good.
And his name is John George Gigleheimer Schmidt. So I told him, I said, write a letter to him, and he's at such and such an address, and write a letter of demand for collection of a debt, and they will do it.
Yep.
But you just have to go over it. A human has to go over it to make sure everything there is on point, inclusive, and what you want to have it say.
Yeah.
You're building a foundation. You're not building the house with it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. So what I did is I basically stated the facts in my case are A, B, C, D, E, right? Put them all into there, because I could copy those facts. I could just take them from a document that already existed, drop, put it into the AI. I said, now write me a letter demanding X from this particular individual. It wrote a letter, and I utilized probably 80% of that letter.
Yeah, there's always things to do with. I'm trying to write like kind of books or articles.
Well, the great thing about this is that had I been sat down and drafting that letter, I'd have probably spent about 50 minutes doing it, right? And at some point I would have gone, I'm not sure I like this terminology in here. Whereas having the AI do it for me.
Paragraph, start again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And with having the AI do it for me, basically meant that I didn't have. I had about 20 minutes to get it done because I needed to get home. All right, so I had the AI do it for me. I kind of punched it out and went, I don't like this one. Change this. Change this. Change this. Boom, done in 15 minutes, and I'm done. I'm away. May goodbye. You know, so I had the letter done quickly. Right. I wouldn't use it for everything. All right. Let's be sure. Let's be clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have to be really careful in the legal profession. There's a lot of people think, oh, well, with AI, we don't need legal professionals anymore. I,
Yeah.
as a self-rep, can just go on and go do Chat GPT, and I can start running my own court cases. Okay. Okay. Just because you have a little bit of knowledge can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
don't think it's going to help you win
there's
anything.
not going to be a way of Chat GPT. Listen to this court case while it's going on, please.
Yeah.
And for point number 5, can you write me a cross-examination question that says that the witness is giving a load of bullshit evidence?
Yeah. Give me language that would be useful.
Yeah,
Like
it isn't going to help, is it?
Yeah, without saying they're lying, because you have to be careful. You can't go into court and say, you lied when you went there, didn't you? No, you just say, I have 2 different stories
I
here.
think
One when you're in discovery, and now today in testimony you said this. And I can use exhibit such and such, and I say line 140, here you said this when you were in discovery, and I read it out. And I said, today you're telling a different story. Do you mind giving me an explanation of why you're coming here today? Give me a different story. Right? So that way you're holding them accountable without being antagonistic.
Yeah. Essentially, we're a long way off from AI taking over anything. In fact, I don't think the intentions of AI is to ever really take over. You know, I can see a time when you can go, hey computer, like they do in Star Trek. Hey computer, da-dee-da, right? I can see that. Hey computer, can you help me? We're going on the course. We're going, we're heading to Toronto on the QEW. Where are going to be my major problems on the route? Oh, and by the way, I want to drop off and visit this restaurant in Burlington on the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it'd be a lot of different things. Yeah. So this is the kind of thing like I see it there. Like a lot of people think, oh, pretty soon we'll be able to do surgery on ourselves. Be able to do our own court cases.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that's a new healthcare system of the future. You do self-surgery, and you also have to solve your own crimes that have been done against you. Okay, so you got to go and catch the killer while the police.
No, I still think I would prefer to have Bones come along and go, yeah, you've got a broken arm in here.
Yeah, I'd rather have somebody else do this, thank you, and put me under.
But Bones can have his machine that will go, there you go, repair, okay? I can see that in the future. I can't see AI fixing your broken bones. Okay. All right. So thank you. It's been a wonderful year. So I think we can actually thank everybody for being here. And if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598. You can email Angela at weareinvictuslegal, or me at peter@weareinvictuslegal.legal. And you can go to our website, which is weareinvictus.legal. There we go.
Yep.
And so it's been a pleasure working with you this entire year, and we'll be back in the new year. But before we come back in the new year, let us close out with Angela's favorite part of the show.
So what you heard today on Spin Legal, whether on this show or in any other shows in our series since the beginning of this year, this is not legal advice. But if you need legal advice, then please call us, so you can call another paralegal or a lawyer. Hey, us preferred. But but do call somebody to get specific legal advice that would be applicable to your situation. And as I say, we'll be kind of available during the holidays, but we are making a move to the downstairs, so there will be an interruption. And and in the meantime, have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and have a drink. Have a drink for us,
Have a drink for us, but don't get drunk.
but don't get drunk. Yeah, certainly not getting drunk when you're out going anywhere. All
Yeah,
right.
if you're driving anywhere, don't.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is if you have ideas for future shows or even guests that you might like to see us put on the show, hey, send us a letter, send us a note, hey, either to the email addresses that you've been given or in the Spin Legal column where you can make comments here. Hey,
Yep.
we'd be looking forward to hearing from all of you. I
All
don't
right.
see anybody here on any of our
No.
live
But
feeds.
that's fine. That's fine. It happens from time to time.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So
everybody just
thank you,
try.
everybody, and have a great day. And enjoy yourselves. All right.
Yeah, enjoy
Bye.
yourself.